Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Property Side Hustle podcast. Now, in today's episode, I am going to be interviewing somebody. We've got a guest on today's podcast. It's been a long time coming. I have been talking about it for a while. We've finally managed to get it in the diary. So I'm going to be interviewing a gentleman called Alex Pieri. Now, Alex is one of my mentees on my Property Basecamp program. I've been working with Alex for a few years now. And he's been doing great things in property. He's gone from a standing start to jumping into his first joint venture project where he's banked around £37,000 in fees. And now he's jumped into project 2 and project 3, which he'll tell you all about in the interview. And he's going to be north of £150,000 plus out of 3 projects. No money down. Alex hasn't put a penny into these himself, and he'll tell you all about how he does it, how he structures that, and more in the interview. But just before we get into the interview, I want to talk about property sourcing. Now, property sourcing is a great way of generating income from property without buying property, without needing mortgages, without needing finance. You can do it if you've got bad credit. It's a way of getting into property, helping investors invest, and kind of being a personal shopper for investors. So if you've not heard of property sourcing before, go and check out our page. We have a page. We've got a QR code there on the screen. You can click that and you will end up on a page telling you all about property sourcing. And we have a special offer. On our property sourcing course, we have an amazing offer. Now, other people would charge thousands of pounds for this information and for this sort of knowledge. We're giving it away for £99. So go and check out the website, psmpropertyblog.com. You'll find it on there. Also, you can scan the QR code on the screen and find out more information. So check that out while it's still available. Our property sourcing online course, everything you need. Full processes, contracts included, nothing left out whatsoever for 99 quid. Can't go wrong. Anyway, without further ado, let's bring Alex on and let's find out what he's been up to in property. So hi, Alex. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on, finally. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time and you've been busy on your projects and busy running from pillar to post, getting things finished off with a couple of projects. So it's good to finally get you on. So I guess we'll start right at the beginning. So what was your why, really, for getting into property and wanting to quit the day job?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. Great to see you as always. I'd say my why really. I always knew from a very, very young age I wanted to have my own business. I don't know why that stood out to me, but I wanted to be sort of in control of, I guess, my life. But at the same time, just the fulfillment aspect of it, I knew I wanted to do it. I went through a few different types of things I thought I wanted to do, and eventually landed on property. I suppose property was always for me quite tangible. I could, walk into a property, you can smell the damp, you can smell the problems, you can look at it, you can touch it. And there was always, quite a clear solution. And if it's not a problem that's immediately obvious, it will become obvious. But it was always something that made sense to me. I was never super smart, super genius. So it was something that resonated with me in that sense. And I suppose at the same time, I was very lucky and blessed that my parents were quite involved as well. So they had always bought their residential homes that they wanted to live in, but they'd always buy a dump. They'd do it up while they lived in it, which now that I'm actively involved, I recognise would have been brutal. So I respect that even more now. But they'd always buy, live in it, do it up, and then that's how they sort of got onto the ladder and got bigger and bigger. And it was always humble, but at the same time, I recognised that was the sort of level of work that needed to be done. And so I suppose, having those two elements, wanting my business and property always made sense. So I guess those two came together at the right time. And also recognise just with the climate, as I was sort of growing up, there was always the conversation of, jobs aren't paying enough to be able to afford a house. And I always thought, okay, perhaps the career route over the long term isn't going to do that for me if I want to just, live normally. So that's what pushed me into business. But that's what gave me the extra push into business eventually as well. So yeah, that I hope that answers it really.
Yeah, no, great. No, it's interesting to see the backstory because we've not really discussed that on our monthly calls when we get together. So it's interesting to hear a bit more about the background of why you got into it. So let's go back to that first project. So you've got into property, that first project, which was a JV with somebody we both know quite well. So if you want to kind of talk us through that and the structure of that project and how that felt and what that experience was like as a whole, being the first project, but I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons doing that as well.
Too right, yeah. I mean, it definitely did. It was a great starter project, and in hindsight, at the time, it was quite chaotic for me. It wasn't for the investor, but it was for me because it was everything. I knew with that one, it absolutely had to go right, and there was no question about it. So I gave it everything I had to get that over the line, go as smooth as possible, keep things, to a controlled cost and within a certain time frame as well. And I recognised that it really did pivot and hinge on that one project. So that one was a very good starter project. In hindsight, it was a small, short lease flat that we thought we could turn in from a 1-bed to a 2-bed. So we did the reconfiguration process internally. We didn't add any square footage, but we sort of rearranged the floor plan. Really quite a light refurb, really, but it was heavy in terms of manpower at the time. And we extended that lease out and got it sold. So in terms of the actual structure of it, it was a true joint venture. So the joint venture partner in that instance put the funds in. So we set up an SPV, they put the funds in, and we did everything else. So that partner didn't view the property until maybe 2/3 of the way through the refurb. So we really helped in securing that deal, project managing the refurb, getting it all done, and then getting it sold on the back end as well. But ultimately, how I viewed that as well in the long term was the joint venture partner brought more than just money. It was a genuine business partnership, which was great because at the time I was coming out the back of graduating from uni and starting a day job. So having someone with a bit more experience, not necessarily in property, but in business and in sort of accounting and working with solicitors, that was truly valuable from my side as well. I needed that. So we worked really well together, and it went fairly smoothly, all things considered. But I'd say learning curves from that was just the reality of the time that it takes to get these things over the line. So that one, in terms of the refurb, timeframes were fine and stayed within what we wanted them to be within, but the time of conveyancing on both the purchase and the sale took a lot longer than I thought would be needed. So that really opened my eyes up to needing to factor that in when we're working on trying to scale. We need to recognize that things aren't going to be in and out within the 6 months that some people tell you it's going to be. It's really going to be a year minimum, really. So that was, I'd say, the biggest learning curve from that project. But it went really smooth, and I had a great time on that, really.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we both know that that investor, that JV partner, very well because he's another mentee of mine, and obviously, I've heard it from the other side of the fence as well, and everything was positive, and I'm sure you guys will do something again in the future as well. So, what did it feel like? Now, I remember this feeling, and it was a game changer for me. From when you go from a day job where you pick up a salary at the end of the month. You go to work, you do your work, you get your salary at the end of the month. It's very different, isn't it? A very different feeling when you've got all that blood, sweat and tears over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, and then you get the payday. So what did that first payday feel like when the money landed in the bank from that first project?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I could say I was elated, but honestly, by the time it hit the account, I was so over it. To be honest with you, I wanted the money in the account. No, honestly, it was a weird feeling, because the money hit the account, and that ultimately gave me the freedom to be able to say, okay, now we can spend some more time on the business. But at the same time, it meant, okay, I've got a lot more work to do now because we've got proof of concept, and I know I can do it. So all of a sudden, when that money hit the account, the pressure really built for me, because it was a point where I had to say, okay, I need to give this 100%. So that was the next stage in the property journey, I suppose. So yeah, it was obviously lovely to have, but there were no fancy holidays, no nice cars. It was definitely a case of, okay, now we have to hit the ground running and really push this with everything we've got. So yeah, that's how I'd that's how I'd summarize that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So we're all about the reality on this podcast, and not about the property BS. So, the Lamborghini isn't on the drive quite yet, but the I think it's you create a new set of problems almost for yourself, don't you? When you finish that first project, and like you say, you have proof of concept, and then it's a case of, okay, well, now I have to do this again. And now I have all this information that I've learned from that first project to take into the second project. And now I need to go and find another investor to do something else with. So it's a whole other approach, but it is nice to have that comfort blanket of money in the bank. That's definitely for sure. So
yeah, too right. I mean, it was nice to have. It was definitely nice to have the money in the bank at the time, and that was definitely the catalyst I needed to leave the job, because it gave me that buffer to be able to say I can float myself for a while if we're going to be doing this again. But it was definitely a feeling of thinking, oh, I've done this once. Can we do it again? And because I was in the day job, we didn't have the funds from the first investor to go again, because they had their money tied up elsewhere. But it was a case of leaving and finding out, and that was the risk I was willing to take at the time. But no regrets, not looking back. It was great. So
no, definitely not looking back. So the number one thing I think that a lot of people out there struggle with is actually finding investors. It's finding joint venture partners, finding investors to source for, and finding people to fund your deals ultimately. So tell us how you approach this and deal with the onboarding of investors, because I know we did a lot of work together on your investor pitch deck and kind of standing out from the crowd. And I think going that extra mile makes you stand out from the crowd, doesn't it?
100%, because there's so many people that seem to think it's just a simple conversation. And this was me at the very beginning as well, just one simple conversation. They say they've got money. I'm just going to go and find a deal. So why wouldn't that work? But the reality of it is investors fall through. They've got better opportunities. So for me, yeah, I try and keep the professionalism as high as possible. And I try and stand out the best I can through having a pitch deck ready every single time I speak with an investor, having a portfolio of work that I can show. And that's not necessarily just developments that we've done. It can be projects that we've done, or even stuff we've done at the day job, and how that kind of translates into it, and those transferable skills. So I suppose it's about selling myself in the best manner possible, but at the same time being honest about where we are, what kind of projects we're doing. And I've found that raising capital is much easier when you're not trying to sell a project you've got no experience with. So starting smaller, raising capital in that, showing proof of concept, and then nurturing those relationships as well. So it's not just for me pitching it to them; it's getting them to know, like, and trust me. So I could even tell a story with a few different networking groups that I go to.
Yeah.
So one of them, I recognized, I went once, and it's not just about going to a networking event once and going to every single networking event around the country. Go to the networking event, say hello to people, introduce yourself, don't try and pitch anything, and then nurture those relationships. Go back again the following month and the following month. And then eventually they sort of recognize you, even if you haven't had that full conversation with them. They recognize me as someone who's been there and sort of building rapport with different people. And that's kind of, even though you haven't spoken to them necessarily, having spoken to their friend or someone next to them or being seen in the room helps with just building that relationship slightly further. So that's definitely secured me a few times, investors, because they've seen me be active in the group that they go to where they feel comfortable. So it's finding about, how to build trust with them is what I've found. Yeah.
Yeah, I think networking is where a lot of people do go wrong, because they do have this like preconception that You just have to turn up, maybe dip in and dip out of different events. And I always say pick your event, pick one or two, commit to those events, turn up every single month, every time there's a meeting, and get known. Because if you become a regular and people are used to seeing your face, they have a conversation, then that in itself builds trust, because you are a regular. You're not somebody that dips in and out and disappears and then turns up 6 months later hoping to net investors. It just doesn't work like that, does it?
No, too right, too right. I mean, I could say multiple times when we've been to the same event a few times. When you build relationship with people, not even on a basis of are you going to invest, just on a hello, how are you, pick up on the previous conversation from last time. When someone sees you that next time and they're happy to see you and they show that they're elated to see you in front of all of their investor friends potentially, that builds rapport, because they're
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you're the person that's slightly known in the room, not just some. Especially if you're, as me being slightly younger, I'm typically one of the youngest people in that room.
Yeah.
So the trust is not there straight away. It never is. So it's one of those things where I have to really build that up over time, not just on a one-time basis, because I get that hesitancy.
Yeah, definitely. It's an age thing, and it's also a fear that I think a lot of people have when they're coming into property, and they think, well, I'm new, and it's that fear of being the new person in the room, and I've not done anything, and it's like it takes a lot, doesn't it, to kind of have that confidence to put yourself in the situation. But I always say to people, you've got to be in the room to stand a chance. So you've got to turn up. You've got to go to these events. So moving on from that, let's talk about no money down. I know you're a big fan of this, and I know it's kind of a buzz thing in property, no money down. Well, the money has to come from somewhere. So let's talk about
Yeah.
that. How do you get investors to fully fund the deals that you want to do? Because you approach it in a different way to, I think, a lot of people, because you find the projects you want to do yourself and then go and find the investors to plug into that and fund the deal. So how do you go about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, first things first. I never tell them that I want to do a no money down deal. that's not
Rule
how you
number
pitch
one.
it. Yeah, never say those words. Is the important part of that. But yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking when I'm looking and trying to nurture those relationships with investors is what trying to find out from our conversations that what exactly it is that they're looking for. So I'd say all three of my investors are very different types of investors. So I'd say one is a very astute businessman. He's got much bigger projects going on and wanted to sort of be in and out of a few smaller deals, and that's where I came in. Another is more of a professional, working professional, and doesn't have the time to deal with it. And another is sort of a more of a part-time investor and much more laid back. So it's definitely a case of um, trying to understand where each of those people are coming from, and then being able to sort of cater the right deal to them in that sense, because ultimately it's a business partnership as well, and if you want them to put all of the money in, for me that's I try and play it on the basis of having less risk. We're not working with a bridging company. If you're putting a fully cash fund a deal, there's no bridging company. We've got a bit more security here. They've got a stake in the project too, and that's how it kind of builds up over time. But again, it is a time thing, and having the right project. And sometimes the projects don't line up for whatever reason it could be. And not over promising, I find is a big one. Never, I try my absolute hardest not to over promise and under deliver. I always try and play things cautious and know when to say no. That's a big one. So yeah, never selling myself. I'm always saying I'm very upfront with the risks from the very beginning and saying, listen, I can work the numbers off a conservative value, but this could go horribly wrong, and I can't foresee everything. So just making them aware of that from the very start is what builds that trust. And I think a lot of people think that saying, not giving away any of the negatives will get the investor on board. But for me, say the negatives up front, tell them what could go wrong, tell them how you plan to mitigate against that, and then we can work towards, doing our best to deliver. And that's kind of how I've felt, well, how I've found it, finding the investors and actually getting them on board and to commit. That's how I get them across the line, really.
Yeah, it's. Do you know what, that approach, it works really well, because you're not just massaging their ego. You're not just painting everything out to be perfect. You're dealing with what could be a very well. There's lots of variables, isn't there? Let's face it. Lots of things can go wrong, and from an investor's point of view, any investor looks to de-risk any investment. And if you're coming at it straight out the bat, straight off the mark with a kind of approach of, these are the risks, we're aware of the risks, and this is what we're going to do to de-risk, and we've got contingencies in place, and these are the numbers, and everything's backed up, then it does, without a doubt, gain a lot of trust, just because of your approach, dealing with the risks up front rather than hiding them away and not talking about them.
Yeah, too right, too right, and just being conservative with it as well. Is it, it's always the balance of, whenever I'm sent some kind of deal, it's always the GDV super high and the build costs are super low. And I made that mistake a million times when I was first analyzing deals. It's absolutely fine, but at the same time, when you're really pitching to an investor, especially if they're someone, well, it works both ways. If they're really astute, they're going to call you out on it and not trust you. Or if they're more wet behind the ears, they're not going to call you out and you're going to be stung later. So it's just worth being that extra bit conservative from the very beginning, and getting it over the line, and delivering and potentially over delivering rather than under delivering on what you said you're going to do.
Yeah,
So that's what I've found anyway.
It always feels good when you over deliver, and it's always received well, isn't it? So it's much better to take that approach. And I know, Alex, you're very big on systemizing your approach in how you do things and how you operate your business. And I saw your LinkedIn post recently, and I thought it was fascinating. It was really good insight, actually, to the amount of offers that you make, the amount of investors that you onboard, and then how many of those offers that you make and investors that you want, but how many actually turn into viable deals. And I think a lot of people assume that things just happen a lot more easily than they do in reality.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, this was the start with us as well. I mean, I thought it would be just a case of, go on the viewing, put in an offer, get it accepted, and call it a day. It's not. That's not how it is in reality. I mean, before getting the first deal, without any systems, I did, I think, 40 viewings on different properties, 40 viewings, just to try and build that sort of experience up and find the right one and make all the mistakes on those before getting that singular one. And now, we have not got time for that. So we had to systemize it a bit better. So we're using, it took us a solid few months to build out that CRM system where we can do automated follow-ups, put the provisional offers in, and if we're close with the provisional offers, we'll go and view it then, because we know we're in the right ballpark. But all of that experience layers on to be able to do this now. So I feel like you do have to go through it and see loads of different properties and make all those mistakes, but at the same time, now we're at the stage where we're trying to put in 10 to 20 cash offers a week. And I know that's not huge compared to some people, some businesses. I had one person I was talking to, they're saying they're putting in 100 cash offers a week and they're looking to get, 2, 3 done a month. So that's a different level. But where we are, it's all us on the phone still. Me and my brother, we're still working together. So, how can we make those calls? We can't do endless calls all week because we've got other stuff we need to handle in the business, ongoing projects. But if we're trying to aim for 10 to 20 project cash offers a week, then we know we're going to get a fairly okay conversion rate, perhaps 3 to 6 months later down the line, because that's sort of the time frame. And it's never on the initial offer, it's always on the follow-up. So we've automated the system and put the systems in place to be able to say, if we put that offer in today, the agent's going to get a follow-up email 2-3 days later to check they received the offer. And then once they've confirmed they've received the offer, they get a follow-up email every 2 or 3 weeks to basically just check in and stay front of mind. And we're not just focusing on that one deal that we've offered on, we're focusing on that one deal plus anything else they get on the back of that. And we've had, on a big push that we found, last year, I think 6 months late, 3 months after that, we got 2 deals across the line, and another 3 months after that, we got another 2 deals agreed. One fell through, one's still going through that process of going through to purchase. So it's that time delay, and the follow up is the most important thing, because they'll fall through on a sale. and then we can step in and we know we've been sort of front of mind without us having to be on the phone all the time. Now, with the really hot leads, we will obviously make sure that we're calling and being that much more proactive. But on the ones that, we're quite a while off anyway, it's not a high chance. We've at least got the system ticking by in the background, and we know we can focus on the day-to-day runnings as well. So that's kind of how we're running it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening to this podcast will be sitting back thinking, wow, the pure volume of work in terms of offers, in terms of chasing things up, and the money is in the follow-up, and I think that's where a lot of people do fall down. So it's great to hear kind of how you're approaching things and how you're operating. So tell me a bit more about kind of the big idea and the goal for the future. What's the dream? Tell me about the dream.
Yeah, I mean, the dream in terms of, I'd say, in terms of the business, in terms of the developments, I know me and my brother have both had the same conversation, and we work closely together. We're business partners now, which I'm really happy about. But we've both had the discussion, and we really want to get on to effectively doing large detached units, buying, doing up, or building from the ground up and selling. And that's what we want to do. Luxury in the luxury space, effectively. That's the end goal with all of this in terms of property. Just finding in terms of having that present, building up a reputation in the area, getting onto those larger projects would be amazing. And that's kind of where we see the most fun in it as well, and producing something special. So that's kind of the dream in terms of the business. But ultimately, in terms of having that, it's not all about the money. I'd quite like to have that balance of, being well-rounded, being able to stay fit and healthy, being able to have time with family, friends, and have some fun as well. Eventually, would be nice, because right now we are in the in the trenches a bit with it, but that's fine. We like it, but it's having that, being able to systemize the business to a point where we can have people doing it for us, and we can sort of manage things from more of a top-down view would be the dream, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we were talking about it the other day about, maybe taking some time out and booking a holiday. And you said before about you're in the trenches at the moment. You're in the middle of completing and wrapping up project 2 and 3, is it, at the moment?
Yeah, that's it. We got 2 and 3 finishing up now. So we've got one that went on the market last week, actually, which was really positive. Really happy about that. And we've got another. Well, photos will be being taken on Wednesday, and hopefully that'll be on the market next week, we hope. So, it just seemed to be endless snagging issues with these projects, but that was absolutely fine. It was all part of the plan anyway. But yeah, now that we've got these 2 sort of on the market, we can take a bit of a breather and sort of consolidate and see where we want to go next, because, we're working hard, but we need to be working a bit smarter, getting the right systems in place and delegating responsibilities a bit better. I think we do well, but I think a bit better would help us in terms of making things slightly easier for ourselves. Would be nice.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think? What would you say the key skills that you need to be successful, and what you do in property, especially speaking personally, and just in property in general? So, somebody listening to this thinking, oh, I'd love to get into property, I'd love to get involved. What are the main kind of key skill sets that you feel you must have?
Yeah, I mean, definitely persistence always comes front to mind when I think about property. And, I haven't had much experience in other businesses, but I think it's the same with any business, would be persistence. It's never going to be just the one lead, the one thing in the pipeline that's rolling. Things will fall through, changes will happen, and I think once those happen, you need to be able to have that persistence to say, okay, yeah, we lost this one. It was a bit of an issue, but we're going to learn from it and push again and keep going. And the amount of times, if we had given up at a certain point, nothing would have come later. But if we had just pushed on, that's when we found the results that came. So even if there is a failure, off the back of that failure, I found is always something that comes positive out of it. So that's what I'd say, is just have a bit of a thick skin, especially being someone who's new into an industry. And I found this is, initially you are going to be laughed out of a conversation, or you are going to approach people at a networking event and they are not going to want to talk to you, and you're going to get that vibe, and you have to be able to deal with that and say, okay, well, it is what it is. And move to the next person and keep those conversations going, and that's fine. But yeah, definitely the persistence is needed in property, and having that thick skin is definitely imperative.
Yeah,
100%.
I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people get into this and then very quickly get back out again because they have the false perception that it's going to be a lot easier than it is. And just off the back of that, we both know there's lots of property courses that sell the dream to people. But let's talk about mentorship specifically. How important do you think it is to have that and feel like someone's got your back through it all?
It's so important. It's the most important thing I'd say is having someone that's ahead of you to be able to, bounce ideas off and come to with problems. I mean, even the amount of times I've come to you with issues that no course would be able to teach. It's just so niche, or so such a sort of agreement or disagreement that needs to be had, or a conversation that needs to be had, that no one's going to be able to teach you unless you're in it. So having someone that's those X amount of steps ahead of you to be able to bounce those ideas off, who's been through it and been through the trenches already, is a nice thing to have in the back pocket and have those conversations. So yeah, I'd say mentorships over courses all day long. But the courses are obviously important, but picking the right ones and not being sold a dream, being realistic with what you think you're going to achieve is also important. I see a lot of it, and I'm still always messaged on Instagram or LinkedIn about joining a new course or a new property mastermind. And I just think now that we've got a few in delivery and we're delivering on what we said we'd do, I just think nothing they're saying is actually is realistic. So you come a bit, I suppose you get a bit bitter towards it, but finding the right person and finding a good mentor is needed 100%.
Yeah, I think it's a minefield out there, and I feel sorry for a lot of people, a lot of newbies who are looking to do something. Obviously, the first step is education, get educated. However, it is a real minefield, and the algorithm on social media, it works against you. Once you click on something, that's it. You're going to see plenty of adverts, and it's tough out there, I think, for a lot of newbies. So wise words from yourself. And so, just to finish up, Alex, I'd like to get your thoughts on the current property market, where we're at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot going on. It seems to change by the day with the news with Donald Trump, which side of the bed he gets out of, and what the impact on the markets. God knows what's going to happen. But what's your kind of take on the property market, and where do you think the opportunities are at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the property market's a difficult one for me because we're based in London. I'm definitely hearing different things from different agents. But the overarching common theme is that leasehold isn't selling as quick as freehold. People are really still after the freehold units. And they're also, the general population are very scared of doing any kind of build works or construction works. So ultimately, projects that are being sold that are ready for the end user to move into is what I'm hearing are the most desirable projects because people don't want to get involved in the build. I'd like to believe that as well, because that's the 2 units that we are selling. So that's what I've got to keep a semi-positive attitude. Otherwise, it's all going to go downhill very fast. But at the same time, that's what I'm seeing in the property market. And that's half the reason we'd quite like to be moving on to freehold too, is just to sort of ride that wave slightly. But I think in terms of opportunities, I suppose with anything, if you've got cash, you'll be okay. There's a lot of buy-to-let landlords that are still selling up entire portfolios or individual units, and there's quite a good opportunity to get really nice discounts on those units. And they might be tired, you might have to evict some tenants, but I think those, if I had cash, I'd be buying all of these portfolios up and doing them up and holding them for the long term without leveraging too hard.
Yeah.
And ultimately as well, small freehold flips, I'd say sub the 750k is where the market is really where people can still afford and buying, or unless you go for high-end luxury where money's not so much the issue. But yeah, I think there's still a market, but it's slower than what it was when I first started anyway, back in 2020-ish. So yeah. That's how I'd say that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think obviously 2020 we had COVID. You came into things in a very bizarre time in the property world, didn't you? So it was a bit of an oddity, and I think we're going through kind of the same thing now. It's like nobody kind of knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and everything's a little bit up in the air, so it's a little bit odd. But if people want to find you, Alex, specifically, they've listened to this and they think, oh, I'd like to maybe work with Alex or reach out to Alex, where can people find you? I'm going to pop your details in the show notes and they'll be on the screen as well, so people can contact you via your website. But where can people reach out to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, for daily stuff, I'd definitely say give me a follow on Instagram, AP_property. And then for sort of updates and insights and project updates as well, LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn as well, just because that's where a lot of the professionals are. So I go there too. But ultimately, yeah, check out the website, see what we're getting up to, and reach out. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone, whether that be investing, deals, any kind of build works as well. More than happy to help where I can, and just build a community, I guess.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the Property Side Hustle podcast, Alex. It's been a while trying to get this arranged.
Thanks for having me.
And hopefully we'll maybe get you back on again in the future when you've done project 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and we've got some fresh stuff to talk about. But thanks for coming on today. We do really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon on our next call.
Too right. Thanks for having me. It was a great time. So looking forward to the next one, and keep well yourself as well. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Alex. See you soon. So I hope you enjoyed Alex's interview there. I'm sure there's lots of really key takeaways. It was really enjoyable chatting to Alex. Obviously, we chat every single month because he's part of our Property Basecamp program, where I support him and mentor him on his property journey ongoing. For as long as he needs that support, it's there. And that's what people get on Property Basecamp. Ongoing support, ongoing guidance, mentorship, and daily support as well. And access to multiple online courses. So if you're thinking you'd like help, if you're thinking you would benefit from having some property mentorship, and you're looking at that, then why not consider Property Basecamp? It is very unique in the UK because most property mentorship in the UK is the support is offered in a group setting, so you're just one of many in a group. And I spoke to a lady last week, actually, and she'd had a really poor experience, signed up with one of the big property trainers, paid out £8,000, and she spent most of the time when she attends their head office just sitting in the room, feeling lost, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stuck, feeling completely out of her depth. And she joined me because she actually wants the one-to-one touch. She wants that support personalised just for her, somebody she can ask questions of, somebody she can jump on a call with and get the answers that she needs. And that's why she's joined. And that's why most people join, is just to have that one-to-one support and guidance ongoing for as long as they need it. And we only charge one fee. There are no ongoing fees with us. So if you're thinking about property mentoring, you're considering mentorship, you're looking for support, you're looking for help, then go and head over to our website, psnpropertyblog.com, and check out Property Basecamp. And if you've got any questions at all, you can watch our overview video on the website where I tell you exactly what's included, deep dive into it and how it works, share some of our success stories as well. Alex is one of them that you've heard from today, and some other people as well. And there's payment options. So we make it easy for you to join, and we're not as expensive as other people. Definitely not. Anyway, hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, the interview with Alex. There'll be more interviews coming up on future episodes, but that's it for today. And till next time, stay safe and take it easy.